Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Kika and today I'm gonna show you some of the special techniques used in the Vanilla Chilla Tee. The Vanilla Chilla Tee is the first summer knit pattern that I'm releasing in 2026, so I'm really excited about it. And I wanna show you some of the details and especially some of the finishing techniques I've used in this. In this video, we're first gonna shape the yoke flat and then continue in the round. Then you're gonna work the body in the round, and here for the body hem, you're gonna work it to double height, and then it's gonna be folded and attached on the inside, and I'm gonna show you that. Then you're also gonna do the same for the sleeves. They're knitted in the round, work that same folded cuff for both sleeves. And then lastly, I'm gonna show you how to pick up stitches here for the collar on the wrong side. And then the collar is worked to double height with a little bit of purl bump here or purl round here. And then all the stitches are attached on the outside, bound off together with some picked up stitches here below that pickup edge. I designed this as a really go-to tee for summer. So I have worked this in a DK weight yarn, the Drops Bell, which is such a nice yarn. I can really recommend it. It's super affordable and I really enjoyed working with it. And it is, let me grab a skein of it. So the content of the yarn that I used is 53% cotton, 33% viscose and 14% linen. So it's really, really comfortable against the skin. And actually Sunnes garn has an exactly same, I think it's the consistency is exactly almost the same. Yeah, it's exactly the same. So Sunnes garn Line has the same consistency, I think the same yardage as well. These two you can use. You can also hold two strands of any fingering weight yarn together to create the same thickness of yarn essentially. Of course, you can also choose a merino and a silk mohair or something completely different if you're working for a different season. But so this is a DK weight yarn, but I'm actually also working on the exact same pattern in a lighter version. So it's gonna be the Vanilla Chilla Tee Light or Vanilla Chilla Light Tee. I don't know where I'm gonna insert that light word, but essentially the same tee, but in a fingering weight yarn. So that is coming up. I'm working on it in a dark blue in a thin line yarn. So just one strand of fingering weight yarn. So if you really like this, the fit of this, but you would like to have it in a even more airy, nice, thinner fabric for the really hot summer days, you can choose that instead. All the techniques are the same, so they still apply in this video. All right, without further ado, I'm gonna jump straight into the actual guide tutorial portion of this video. As always, you can find the pattern to the Vanilla Chilla Tee over at Kutuva Kika or then at Ravelry if you prefer to have it in your Ravelry download library. And you can use, so in the description below here on YouTube, you can see chapters. So I put timestamps for the different techniques. So you can go and check exactly where the specific techniques are that you maybe want some support or help with. All right, let's begin. So first I'm gonna show you how to work the yoke. And the yoke is first actually knitted flat. So you're gonna knit back and forth for a few rows. And we do this to help raise the back. So you can see here that the back is taller than the front, and that will create a really nice and flattering fit. I'm gonna be using the long tail cast-on method, but you can actually use pretty much any cast-on method that you prefer because this edge is gonna be hidden anyways because we're gonna be picking up stitches for the double folded collar at the end. When you've cast on all of your stitches, we're gonna work one preparation row on the wrong side, and we're gonna be placing stitch markers, 8 different stitch markers to mark where the raglan seams are going to be. This is optional, but I'm gonna be using different colors for each pair. It's just a little fun way to keep visually track of where you are. I've now placed my markers. So you can see here we have these raglan seams, and here are the back stitches, and here are the sleeves. So we only have a few front stitches. And now the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna work this back and forth, and we're going to be increasing with what is called KFB. So we're gonna be knitting front and back the same stitch to create this really nice neckline shaping. Next, I'm gonna be showing you the technique KFB, knit front back, make one right, and make one left. So the first row on the right side starts with a KFB, so knit front back. So you're gonna, as you would normally, just go in through the stitch, wrap some yarn around and take it through. And then you're not gonna drop it from your left to the right needle yet, but actually we're gonna knit the same stitch from the back loop. So I will just insert my right needle here through the back loop, grab some yarn and take it through. So now you can see that I've knitted the stitch twice, both from the front and from the back. And then we can go ahead and slide it over to the right side. So we've increased one stitch. Then I'm gonna, oh, my stitch is twisted here. Let me fix that. So then I'm gonna knit one. And here, always on the right side here on these raglan seams, we're gonna be making one right and make one left. So I'm gonna show you this for like a really breakdown tutorial. I'm gonna link some to other videos below, but I'll just show you sort of the gist of it. So make one right is you're gonna be making an increase by picking up this strand here between the stitches. So this little strand, and use the left needle to pick it up from the back. So that strand going through the back, and then I'm gonna knit it from the front. So I twist that strand like so, and we've created an increase. Then I'm gonna slip the marker, SM, and then my stitches are here. They're like twisted the wrong way just because I had to frog a little bit before, so don't get confused about that. And then again, I slip, and next I'm gonna make one left. Again, I'm gonna show this kind of quickly, so I'll link to another video if you want like a more slower breakdown of this. But here, again, locating the strand here between, and make one left. So now we need to go from the front and knit that stitch from the back, like so. And then we're gonna be doing these increases at every raglan seam here on the right side. And on the wrong side, we just purl, but the thing that you do keep doing is make the knit front back on each row, always in the first and the last stitch. All right, I have now completed the shaping for the back, so this is what it will end up with. And if you're unsure, you can always check. It will say in the pattern how many stitches you will have for each section, so that's a great way to know if you've done enough rows. Next step is we're gonna start to work this in the round. You have ended up on a wrong side row, so next we're gonna join to start working in the round. So you're gonna turn the work again, and then we're gonna start to again on a right side row, but this time this is going to be joined in the round. I've now knitted almost all my stitches here for the right side row, and here's now essentially the front stitches on the other side. And then we're going to be casting on some new additional stitches for the middle of the neckline. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to use a method called the backwards loop method. So I just knit these last stitches, and then you can check the pattern to see how many stitches you will need. I'm just gonna grab the yarn and use my thumb and then cast on additional stitches here. So these are going to be the middle of the neckline. All right, there I have my new stitches, and then I'm going to be joining in the round. So I'm gonna actually be placing a new beginning of round marker. I'm gonna use a different type of marker just so I know that this is my beginning of round marker. And I'm gonna pop that onto my right needle, and now we're gonna start to work in the round. So you have the beginning of our marker is in a bit of a wonky placement, so it's here kind of in the middle of the front stitches, and you're just gonna always then change the round happens here. So after our joining around, you're just gonna start to work. I'm gonna knit all of these stitches for this round, and then you have on every second round, so on round number 2, you have those raglan increases, and you're gonna follow the pattern. So for some of the sizes, the raglan increases for the sleeves stop at some point, and then they continue on for just the front and the back. So do check your pattern, but essentially this is all you're gonna do now for the entire yoke. And then you're gonna work the lower body, the sleeves, and I'm gonna show you some next steps. Next, I'm going to show you how to work the collar. So the collar is worked by picking up stitches from the wrong side and then working the collar to double height essentially. Then it's folded over towards the outside and then it's attached by binding off stitches here together with some stitches that you pick up here just below the pickup edge. So let's just work all that through. Here I have my striped version of the Vanilla Chilla Tee. And I'm actually gonna show you now on this how to work the collar. I haven't worked the full yoke yet, but you can work the collar at this point as well. So for this, I'm going to be using a smaller size needle than I am working the yoke with. So I'm gonna pick up a 3mm, so that's a US 2.5 circular needle. All right, so for the collar, we're gonna start picking up stitches from the wrong side, meaning I will flip my work like so, and I'm gonna start picking up stitches here from one of the back raglan seams. And again, you pick up from the wrong side of the work, and don't worry about it then showing on the right side because we're gonna fold over the collar, so it's not gonna show. I'm just gonna grab some new yarn and start here. It doesn't really matter which raglan seam here at the back you begin from. The pickup rhythm here is approximately 1 stitch per stitch. I have in the pattern given some numbers for each size, how many stitches you want to end up with, but be mindful. I know that this can vary quite a lot from knitter to knitter, like how many stitches you actually need, just depending on how your tension. So be mindful about that. I know some test knitters picked up a bit more additional stitches than was in the pattern originally. But approximately 1 stitch per stitch and 1 stitch per row once we get to those slanted edges. All right, I have picked up all of the stitches from around the neckline. I had to skip a few here at the slanted edges here at the beginning, or at the front, I mean. I picked up a few, and you can see like it doesn't look super neat now here on the right side, but not to worry because this will be hidden once we then fold over the collar, so you're not gonna see that. So on the right side at the moment, doesn't look great, but in the end, it will be gone. All right, so when you have picked up your stitches, you're here now on the wrong side facing you working. I'm gonna pop a beginning of round marker, and then I'm gonna start to just knit in the round. So you're gonna knit in the round until it measures approximately like 3 centimeters, so a bit over an inch, an inch and a quarter. And then you're gonna do that purl round, and then you're gonna knit in stockinette stitch an additional about 3 centimeters or 1 inch and a quarter. So that's gonna look like this. So here you just knit, knit, knit. You do that purl round, and then you knit, knit, knit. And then I'm gonna show you how to bind off these stitches so it creates a really, really neat folded edge. All right, I have now worked my collar to double height, and I have gone in and I've put in these kind of guidelines for myself. So the next step is this collar is gonna fold over like this, and we're gonna attach it here on the right side. And the thing that I find really tricky and what often can happen is that it starts to kind of skew because it's kind of hard to see here that you're aligning it straight. So you want basically these knit columns. So essentially here's where it starts and that's where it ends, like the same knit column. So I put in a contrasting color, just some scrap yarn. I just used tapestry needle to weave these in. I'm gonna then take them out. So now I know that when I fold it, that's where the line goes. I know it needs to fold exactly here. And I've placed these all over here at the collar. So it's just gonna be so much easier now when I start to bind off stitches. I'm gonna use a double pointed needle, and I'm actually gonna size up half a needle size for this because you really want the edge to not be too tight, because then it will be hard to pull the tee over your head. I'm actually gonna try and bind off in a contrasting color. Maybe it will help it make a little visible what happens, and it's also just like a fun experiment. Let's see if it looks good. If not, then I can just go ahead and then frog it. All right, so I'm gonna fold the collar now here in half so that the purl bump is at the fold. And first thing is, so I'm gonna use this spare needle, and I'm gonna essentially, so here you have the kind of pickup line, and I'm gonna always pick up a stitch from just below that pickup line, And first step is we're just going to transfer this stitch onto our left needle like this. So here I have that picked up stitch from just below the pickup edge, and then here's the first stitch on my needle. So then I'm just going to insert my needle into these, and I'm going to knit them two together, and I'm going to use my contrasting color here for this. Like that, and I can drop it off the needle. Then again, I'm going to go and pick up the next loop here from just a stitch below the pickup edge and take that onto my needle. And again, I need to grab some yarn. So the picked up stitch together with the stitch from my needle, like that. And then I can go ahead and bound these two off. So I'm gonna just pull that first stitch over the second stitch. All right, so I have started binding off stitches here in this contrasting color. I think it looks quite fun. So, and here I can now go ahead and remove this help line. So essentially what you do is I'm using now this spare needle. So what you do is you go in a stitch below. So here you see the pickup edge quite clearly. So I'm gonna use a loop from just below that edge. So I'm gonna take one loop of a stitch, and I grab it with my right hand needle and I transfer it onto the left needle. Then I will grab some yarn and I will knit these two together. So the picked up stitch with the first stitch on my left needle. Knit those two together. And then I have a stitch here already on my right needle. So then I can go ahead, so then I just transfer that from the left needle. So I have two stitches here on my right needle, and then just as in a regular standard bind off, I pull the first stitch over that second stitch, like that, and I have bound off a stitch. So let's do that once more. So again, I go into the next kind of stitch here, and now again, okay, so now I have my help line. I need to move a little further, so I'm already like skewed a little bit, so I need to pull up a stitch from here, or pick up a stitch. I move it onto the left needle, knit these two together, and then I bind off that stitch. So I move the first stitch on my right needle over that second stitch. And then again repeat, and now I have this little guideline, and I can see it's peeping out there, so I want to really hit that stitch underneath so I know that my collar doesn't get skewed. Knit those two together on the left needle, drop them, and then pull the first stitch over the second. And I'm going to repeat this all the way across the collar. So mind you, this is a bit of a tedious part. I really like the finishing touches. I always think it's so nice to see everything come together, but definitely recommend having good light and energy when doing this. And I had to rip back many times the first time I used this technique. So you might have to rip back a few times. It takes some trial and error to get this right, I find. All right, so I've just bound off my last stitch and we have one little stitch here left. And now you can see there's a little bit of like a gap, so I want to make that seamless. So I'll just show you what I do. So I like to go in here through the first stitch, or actually, let me see. This is actually the first stitch. So you can really see it here because I use this contrasting color. So I'm gonna go in and kind of through it like under that loop. Then I'm gonna grab some new yarn and I take it through that first loop, which is proving to be hard because it's very tight for some reason. Okay, there you go, like that. And then I take it through, and then I need my other needle. And then I'm just gonna go in, or one more time, pull that first stitch over that second stitch, like that. And then I've already gone ahead and cut my yarn, and so I can just pull it through. And let me see, tighten these a little bit. Yeah, and we have a pretty seamless little edge here. Of course, then when I weave in the end, you can make this even more seamless. So I'm probably gonna weave in the end like so somehow to try to make it very invisible. All right, so here we can now see the final result. It's a little puckering, but that will definitely get smoothed out once we block this and steam block it, but you can really see what a nice finishing touch this technique gives. And of course you can use this on other projects as well. I really, really like it, even though it's a little time consuming, but I think definitely worth it. Next, I'm gonna show you how to attach the hem on the inside. So you will have worked the hem to double length, and you have this pearl bump row or round here, and that's gonna create a really good place for you to fold down the hem. And then you can see that I've attached it here on the wrong side just by hand sewing, so I wanted to show you that. The same technique is applied for the hem and also here for the sleeve cuffs. So both the sleeve cuffs use the same technique here, folded down on the wrong side and then attached by hand sewing. I am working on a Vanilla Chilla Tee here in a lighter version or a fingering weight yarn, and here I've completed the hem. So here I have just done that little pearl bump round, and then worked my hem and just used the standard bind off method. And then I've gone ahead and I left a really long tail, so I can use this now when I'm gonna attach this hem. So we want to fold the hem towards the inside and fold exactly there at the pearl bumps. And what I'm gonna do is, so one thing to be mindful is that you align it so that it goes straight, so it doesn't start to pull or get crooked as you go and as you do this. All right, so let me show you what I've done here. I've gone ahead and got started a little bit, so you just can see how it looks. So you're gonna basically insert your needle here through the top loop of that bind off edge. So you can see here, we have these stitches from the bind off edge. And now that top loop, so that is this here, that is where I'm gonna take my needle through, so through the top loop from underneath, and I'm gonna then attach it on one of these pearl bumps here on the wrong side, take it through and just pull through and then not tighten too much. And then I'm gonna do that for absolutely every stitch. So again, I go through only that top loop of those from that bind off edge from underneath, and then I try to use the same line here of pearl stitches here on the wrong side to make sure, and I all the time kind of check that it's in line, that it doesn't become skewed or anything, and kind of hold it like this, or even better, maybe just on a flat surface. One thing to be mindful here is to not pull too tight, because then that will kind of pull and you will kind of make it visible on the right side, so you don't want to do that. And this will create a little bit of like a nice little line here on the right side. You can kind of see that. So that's also why you really want to make sure that you follow the same round or row essentially here on the wrong side. So this is definitely something you don't want to do when it's too dark. You want to have good light, be focused, and do this in just when you have the energy and good light to do this. Here you can see the final end result. So it creates a really, really, really neat hem. And here you can see on the inside how it looks. So I've just tried to trace sort of the same line just to get a really straight and clean and polished line. And of course, this will even out even more after we block it. All right, so now you've basically seen the whole like kind of the overview, the special techniques that are used in this pattern. And obviously at the last step, I always recommend to wet block this or steam block it. That will especially help with like all of these folded, the cuffs and the hem, and also with the collar. And with the collar, you can even try, because sometimes it feels a little stiff or tight, especially this bind off edge. So that really helps, that when it's damp, you can kind of stretch it out a little bit and just shape it and just help it like lay nice and flat. And then that is it. Then you are ready to wear your new Vanilla Chilla Tee. As always, I would love to see your project. So if you make this, then you can use the hashtag Vanilla Chilla Tee if you post, for example, on Instagram. And then on Ravelry, that's like a really great place. So if you go and click the pattern and then project, you can see other knitters' projects. I always think it's so much fun to see what knitters, what kind of colors you've chosen, what yarns. Some people do modifications, which I always of course welcome. I think it's always super interesting to see how you adapt any pattern that I make into your own, and often get like really inspired. So somebody might make from a top a dress, or add some long sleeves, or whatever you want for your own hand knitted wardrobe. All right, I hope you found this helpful and enjoyable, and I hope to see your Vanilla Chilla Tee soon. Also, yeah, that striped version I was working on in this video, I think I'm gonna release as a separate pattern, or then it's gonna be included. We'll see. I'm kind of figuring that out still as we go. And the Vanilla Chilla Tee Light is also coming up if you're watching this video when it goes live. All right, take care and see you, and come and say hi. I'm over at Kutava Kikka on Instagram. See you next time. Bye.